Guess who hasn't been invited to Munich? The Russians. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has been a long fixture at the Munich conference, but this year he won't be there. It's Europe's way of punishing Russia, or so they want the world to believe. They make a lot of noise about every such move, about how they've sanctioned Russia's energy sector because they do not want to bankroll Putin's war. They lectured India for buying Russian oil. They told the world how they have stopped importing oil and gas from Moscow. But here's something that Europe will not tell you. They've left a glaring loophole in their sanctions regime, and they've done it on purpose. We are talking about nuclear fuel. The world depends on Russia for nuclear energy, and Russia's nuclear trade is booming. It has seen a tremendous increase over the past year, the same year when Russia invaded Ukraine. I have some data with me. Russian nuclear fuel and technology sales rose more than 20% in 2022. What has Europe got to do with it? Everything. The EU's purchase of Russian nuclear fuel was at a 3-year high last year. A 3-year high because Europe is a big market for Russia. In 2021, Russia was the EU's third largest supplier of nuclear fuel. The EU paid more than $330 million to Russia for such fuel. European utilities that supply power to around 100 million people, I repeat 100 million people, rely on Russian nuclear giant Rosatom for supplies. Now, when I say nuclear fuel, I mean uranium. Almost all nuclear plants depend on uranium. And not just any uranium, it's an isotope called uranium-235. What's an isotope? Isotopes are distinct nuclear species of the same element. I don't want this to become a chemistry class, so I'll leave it at that. They're a type of uranium, 235. But coming back to the topic, the West loves Russian uranium. It won't be able to survive without it. At least their nuclear power plants will not. As I said, Russia was the EU's third largest uranium supplier in 2021. It accounted for almost 20% of the EU's uranium imports. And in the last year, Russia's market share has increased, a jump of another 20%. Do you know who is the EU's second largest uranium supplier? Kazakhstan. And why is Kazakhstan important? Because uranium mining in Kazakhstan is also controlled by the Russians, by Russia's state-owned giant Rosatom, to be specific. So Russia actually controls nearly 43% of the EU's nuclear supplies. What about the United States? Ukraine's staunchest ally, the one that claims to have built a global coalition to support Ukraine. How much Russian uranium does America buy? About 15% of its uranium demand is fulfilled by Russia. And I'm still talking about natural uranium. There's another sphere where Russia is a global hegemon, and that is in providing nuclear enrichment services to various countries. The US bought almost 28% of such services from Russia in 2021. What about the European Union? It bought 26% of nuclear enrichment services from Russia in 2020. What do these numbers tell you? That the world depends on Russia for its nuclear needs a lot more than the world admits. Russia is also a global leader when it comes to nuclear power plant development. In the last decade, Russia started 19 nuclear power plant projects, 19. Do you know how many of these were started in other countries? 15. And that should give you some fuel for thought. Next question. Why do countries rely on Russia so much? Because it is a superior nuclear power. It offers a complete package: fuel, enrichment services, training a skilled workforce, disposing radioactive waste, and even running scholarship programs. Russia offers all of this and more. Russia's global nuclear footprint is expanding. 11 countries have operational Russian nuclear reactors. Many more are under construction. Russia has signed deals with at least 30 countries around the world. It gives big loans to build nuclear power plants. And these loans cover almost 80% of the construction cost. I have some examples. Russia has given $35 billion to Egypt in nuclear loans, $11 billion to Bangladesh, and $10 billion to Hungary. It's a long list, and Ukraine knows this. Its president has been pushing for sanctions on Russia's nuclear sector.
The time has come, in particular, for sanctions against the Russian nuclear industry, against all its branches, organizations, and all entities that work for the Russian missile program, as well as for new steps in the energy sector, including an embargo on Russian energy carriers. Europe has enough power to leave a terrorist state without such a powerful resource for its aggression.
такого потужного ресурсу.
Zelensky has been saying this for quite some time now, but the West hasn't lifted a finger. Why? Because it doesn't suit them. Russia is critical for their nuclear needs. Some European countries depend entirely on Russian nuclear fuel. In fact, I have a quote from Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban from the month of January. This is what he said: "We will not allow the plan to include nuclear energy into the sanctions to be implemented. This is out of the question." And remember, the EU cannot impose sanctions until all of its members are on board. Hungary is a member. So this is a non-starter. Also, another example of the West's hypocrisy. Them buying Russian nuclear fuel is okay, but India buying Russian oil is problematic.